It is a Weinberg Wednesday, and that means Dave Weinberg joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. You can catch all of his extra points columns at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's covered the Eagles for a long time, over 26 years, Hall of Fame boxing writer, and more. And I said he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So let's get all the hyper serious stuff out of the way first. Obviously, this Desean Jackson story has in many ways dominated many aspects of the news cycle over the last 36 hours. So I wanted to start with, talk to the folks about, you've covered Desean, you've been in the locker room around him in the past. So what is your impressions of him as a person in light of what has happened with him over the last 36 hours?
Oh, boy. Well, when he originally came back to the Eagles, when he first joined the Eagles, he was immature, to say the least. The Eagles kind of stressed the point that he was older now. He's a family man, has grown both emotionally and mentally, physically, and they were trying to push that narrative last season. But in the wake of these, the recent posts that he's made, and the half-hearted apology, I'm really not sure that he's indeed has grown as much as they would like to say.
With that being said, I think, really quick, if I just jump in here, did you find it interesting that there were two different apologies? The one before he talked to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and then the one afterward?
Oh, yeah. And the second one wasn't him. That's his agent. I don't know if he understood or if he didn't care about the ramifications of what he posted. And I think when the Eagles kind of made it clear to him what he had done was, way out of bounds. I think maybe he had a change of heart. I still don't know that he understands or agrees with their stance, but I guess just to save face and possibly save his job, he was willing to do whatever they wanted him to do.
Now, we know the Eagles have a history of dealing with players who have said and done things off the field. And I know a lot of people are drawing parallels between Desean Jackson in 2020 and what happened years ago with Riley Cooper. But Dave, is that really a fair...
I don't understand, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that really a fair line to draw? Because I feel like they're two totally different situations.
Yeah, one was, first off, it was 7 years ago. And, this is probably an unpopular stance, but Riley was caught on camera by TMZ or whoever was at the concert. By the way, he was there with Jason Kelsey and Chip Kelly, which people seem to forget. But anyway, he made that really stupid remark, and naturally went viral. Desean willfully and purposely said what he said. It wasn't like a spur of the moment. At a concert, not knowing that cameras are on you. This was intentional. And I just don't see the correlation between the two, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. What Riley did was despicable, horrible, and he should have been suspended, which he wasn't. But in my view, I just think Desean's was a little bit more serious, just in my view. And just to be clear, I'm not Jewish, so I know there's some people probably think it. Make that natural assumption because of my last name. I am, but I'm not. But in any case, whether I am or not, that has no bearing on the fact that I think that what he did was worse.
With that being said, what do you think should be the proper punishment? You mentioned that Riley Cooper didn't get suspended. He was only fined. So is that a precedent for Desean, or is that one of those things where that was a different, quote-unquote, regime in charge back then?
Oh, no, it's the same regime. Joe Banner was gone by then. It was definitely, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. Chip Kelly was in his first season, so he really didn't have much to say. I think the punishment might have been even worse for Riley if Michael Vick hadn't come to his defense a little bit. And he was the one who kind of much saved Riley's season there by having his back, by mentioning that he's a friend and that he had forgiven him. There were a lot of guys who didn't. Not a lot of guys, but I would say the locker room was pretty much divided, even after his apology, which I thought came from the heart. I mean, whether it was sincere or not, I don't know, but I thought it was. And I just I don't know how you can say, well, Riley wasn't suspended, so Desean shouldn't be suspended. I just think they're two different scenarios. Just because you made a mistake with Riley doesn't mean you make the same mistake with Desean. I don't think Desean gets a pass just because Riley did. No, what that suspension is, it's not for me to say. I mean, I've heard people say a couple games. I've heard of people say his days with the Eagles are done. But I imagine Jeffrey Lurie and Harry Rosen are going to have to sit down and figure out. But they have to do something.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg 19. Dave, the other thing that came out with the Eagles recently is, and I find this very fascinating, this offer to defer their season tickets to 2021. And, one of the things I immediately think of, and I think you did too on Twitter, which was you have a season ticket holder like Mike Trout. And Mike Trout,
that was the first thing that came to my mind. Yep.
Yeah, because what's Mike Trout doing right now? He's at Angels camp, but he's wearing a mask, and he's talked about how he wants to be there for the birth of his child. So, if he has those kind of concerns with his job, he has to have the same kind of concerns with the Eagles tickets. So, I'm assuming, Dave, that Trout wouldn't be the only one thinking, you know what, I'm going to accept this offer to defer to 2021.
Yeah, I mean, if he's as concerned about it as he seems to be, I don't know how he could go ahead and either back out or leave the team and then go ahead and you see him front row and center at an Eagles game in September or October or whatever. That kind of defeats the purpose of his stance now. So I would think that he really has no choice but to defer his tickets, just as the right thing to do if he's really worried about his newborn coming up in August and their health and the health and well-being of his family. It would seem like there would be logical that he would defer his season tickets. I'll be curious to see. Like I know quite a few guys people who have season tickets. I haven't reached out to them yet, but I'll be curious to see how they do it. It's obvious that the Eagles are going to have to, and every team is going to have to reduce the size of their attendance for games if they even have fans at all. But so it's going to be interesting to see which season ticket holders take this option. But I would think, in light of everything that's happened, that might be the sensible thing to do, is to just keep your season tickets and defer them for another year. Although, from what I understand, I don't know what the procedure is in terms of playoff tickets. Like, if you defer, do you also give up your right to go to a playoff game if the Eagles happen to make it? I don't know what that's going to be like.
Well, the other thing I find interesting, Dave, is that there's been talk that the league is going to give fans these disclaimer clauses if they want to go to a game, basically saying, I understand attending a game, something might happen to me. And I kind of find it interesting that if that is ever an option, and let's say they do have diminished attendance and whatever number that is, 30% capacity, is that even a smart option because of the fact that there's so many unknowns and what ifs that's going on right now?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess so obviously you have to have, pretty strict protocols in place in terms of social distancing, wearing masks, and that kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out. I mean, it would seem to me that the safe thing to do, the logical thing to do, is to just, I don't know, play without fans or severely reduce the attendance, maybe to 25% or something like that. Maybe something like the casinos are doing at the moment. I guess the league is going to have to really sit down and take a hard look at what they're going to do from a fan standpoint here.
You mentioned the casinos in Atlantic City. We broadcast last week to Mike Gill and Hunter Brody from the Sports Bash from the Hard Rock. They have these, temperature scanners when you walk in the door, and everybody's wearing masks and everything. So we know that there's a way to do this. I would assume the NFL has the financial wherewithal to be able to do similar, if even more, stringent procedures. But I think, Dave, there's a difference between them being able to pull that off and if they should pull it off. To me, those are two different things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're, the NFL and every other major sport, they're predicated on, attendance. So, of course, TV contracts are kind of what drive the boat, so to speak. But, the more fans in the stands, it's better for the teams, better for the concessions, merchandise sales, everything. So, there's a lot at stake here in terms of, how many fans do you allow in? But you also have to err on the side of caution as well. I mean, you don't want someone to, God forbid, get COVID-19 and then wind up being, seriously ill or even worse than that. They're going to have a hard time explaining themselves. But you're right. I guess if you sign a waiver, maybe that's the way that they escape responsibility for it. I don't know.
But we also know that a lot of players are having to sign similar agreements. The
Sure.
players who are entering these bubbles are signing similar agreements. But there's a huge difference between my employer is paying me to be here and a customer who's paying to get in the door. And I think that's kind of where, at least for me, Dave, where the rub is. Whereas when one person, it's their job to be there, being paid to be there, whereas the other person is literally paying you. The person is putting on the product to let them in the door. I think those are it's just a different dynamic to me.
Right. I mean, it's just like a casino blackjack dealer who has to be there as opposed to the customer who just voluntarily goes to play blackjack. If it's your job, it's your profession. That's a whole different ballgame as opposed to being, voluntarily going to a restaurant or to a casino or to a ball game. That's a whole different scenario. You're right.
Dave, we know how much you love baseball. We've talked about that here numerous times. And, the reports over the weekend of, they're having troubles with delivery and they're having troubles of getting the tests back and the results. And then you had multiple teams shut down their camps on Sunday and Monday. And, the Phillies said that they had, Adam Hazley, his test was a whole mess of a situation. And then all of a sudden today, ESPN gets their hold on the results, Dave. The results were that the ESPN says that the players and coaches combined had in the first round of tests a 1.8% positive rate, and then the second round being a 0.5% positive rate. So that sounds great, Dave, but in the light of the fact they had trouble even getting the test even done, I still don't have a lot of confidence in those numbers.
Yeah, everything seems so confusing to me how, they I would have thought they would have done their homework. They would have, placed all these. It seemed that they placed, the proper protocols in place. Yet had, so many positive tests. And you're right. There's been so much inconsistency in terms of testing the results, and that kind of thing that it does make you wonder if they're really accurate. I'm of the opinion though that I think the fact that it's been such a minuscule amount that tends me to believe that maybe they are headed in the right direction. Like you said, the second test was significantly lower than the first, so maybe they finally do have a handle on it, and that both teams and players and managers are a little more confident in terms of going ahead with what remains of the season.
Do you think for a guy like Mike Trout that those kind of numbers will maybe at least give him a little bit more hope that, it is going to genuinely be safe? Or do you think Mike's just one of those guys where those kind of things are just not going to matter to him because at the end of the day, he's just going to do what he needs to do to protect his family no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for Mike, but knowing him a little bit the way I do and his family, I know that family comes first with them and, with his parents and brother and wife and what have you. So, yeah, I'm tending to believe that he's just going to do what's right for his family, regardless of what the statistics say. But all those guys are in a really tough situation because it's like teachers, it's like doctors, it's like, like I said, I keep mentioning the casino and, restaurant, hotels, that's their job and they're expected to perform it, regardless of the risk, I guess. And, so it's a real tough call for Mike. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do. I would assume that he's at least going to start the season, and then, once their baby arrives, take it from there. But that's going to be a really difficult decision for him to make.
Dave, I remiss before I let you go. You're Extra Points column last week over at 97.3 ESPN.com talked about the situation with one of the biggest things locally in our area, the lifeguard races, and how in July the events are canceled. They're reevaluating for August. Just talk a little bit about, what those events really mean to the community and, how disappointing it is that, even the fact that we know that businesses are slowly have the opportunity to open up, that you're losing a huge part of the summer season locally without those races.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that some people may not realize just the impact and the value that lifeguard racing has. I mean, it's a very steeped in tradition dating back to the 1920s or so, where patrols up and down the Jersey Shore where we're competing against each other. The South Jersey race just had its 80th running. I think the 80th edition of the race was last year, and there's several other races there. The Best in Callahan's in North Wildwood, the Cayman County Championships, and there's the so-called Big Three, the Dutch Hoffmans, the Margate Memorials, and the South Jersey. They all date back 50, 60, 70 years, and there's generations of lifeguards who've competed in it. Fathers, grandfathers, sons. It's a part of the community. It's a part of beach patrols all the way from Cape May Point to even Long Beach Island, and the fact that they haven't been able to stage these races is a big hit for them. I mean, it's the first time since probably World War II that the races haven't been held, and it's really tough on them because people take a lot of pride in competing, both for themselves and for their patrols and even their communities, and it's a real shame that they had to delay it.
Absolutely. He's Dave Weinberg. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Again, I encourage you to check out his Extra Points column about the lifeguard races. It's a great read over at 97.3 ESPN.com. And Dave joins us as he does each and every Wednesday here on the warm-up for a Weinberg Wednesday on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Dave, I appreciate the time and I appreciate the conversation as always.
Oh, thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. Take care.